Okay, BookTrib.com today is partnered with Writer's Digest for a live chat featuring international and New York Times best-selling author Steve Berry. As many of you know, Steve is one of our most popular and successful thriller writers, with 18 million books in print in over 50 countries around the world. He's also a founding member and past president of International Thriller Writers, and the author of several books which always have history at the heart of them, especially little-known facts that we rarely find in our school history texts. His latest book, The Lincoln Myth, has garnered lots of positive critical reaction. Associated Press called it a compelling story. That's his best novel in years, and Kirkus says it's all action all the time as Malone once again yanks civilization back from the precipice. It reveals some obscure history about Abe Lincoln, a secret pact he made with the Mormons during the Civil War, the history of secession in America, and more. When Steve isn't writing a new book, he's working to preserve history through his philanthropic foundation called History Matters, which takes him around the country for talks and workshops, the proceeds from which go toward sponsoring organizations' historic preservation efforts. At the end of this chat, make sure that you sign up for BookTrib to enter to win a copy of Steve's new book, The Lincoln Myth, which is right here. Getting to the questions. The first one is from Pamela. She says, what makes you happiest as an author, and what are the kinds of things that make it all worthwhile?
I'm always happy when people enjoy the story, because you write a story all by yourself. You sit here alone and you churn it out and you wonder if anyone's ever going to read it. So it's always happiest when people enjoy it and they like it and they derive some pleasure and they get to forget their troubles for a little while, because that's really my job. I'm an entertainer. My job is to help you forget life for a little while, suspend belief and have some fun, and the kind of things that make it all worthwhile. That's really the number one thing. When someone tells me that I actually forgot my troubles for a while and enjoyed myself, that's the number one compliment I think any writer can receive. Somebody needs to get that. Did that phone ring? Oh, I see. It rings every time there's a new question. Is that what it is?
Yes, yes. You wrote
you have a new thing. This is new contraption you have here.
Oh, yes. You wrote your first novel in 1990. What made you decide to start, and how did you handle rejection? This is from Carly.
Oh, the only reason I started to write at all was because I had a little voice in my head. Every writer I've ever met has a little voice in their head that tells them to write, and it's just something that kind of drives you forward. It doesn't say write a bestseller and sell a bunch of books. It just says just write, sit down and write. And finally, I listened to that voice after 10 years of ignoring it. But it took me 12 years from the day I wrote my first word to the day I sold my first word. So it was a very long process. There were 85 rejections through that, and you handle rejection simply by just that. You handle it. You just deal with it and you move on. You hang with it, and if you stay in there long enough, you'll catch a break. And that was that was me. One day I caught a break 12 years after the fact.
Do you ever get some time off to perhaps vacation? Where do you like to go to kick back? And this
we don't. Well, actually, where you see me right now is probably the place I go to kick back. We have a place down at the beach, and I come down here as often as I can. So I'm there now, and so I'll spend the next 3 or 4 days kind of in kind of quiet, because I've been on the road for 3 weeks touring. But it's actually not a vacation, because I'm plotting and writing the next book. I haven't had an actual vacation. Well, I think, I should say, well, it was supposed to be a vacation. It didn't turn into one. That was in December of 2012. We went to Salzburg, but it turned into a research trip. I haven't had really a pure vacation in about 3 or 4 years, but I am going to have one in August. We're going to Scotland, and I've never been to Scotland before. We're going to spend about 10 days there with nothing on the agenda. So that'll be really the first real vacation in a while. We're going to Malta in the summertime, but it's a research trip, but we're taking the children, but I'm going to be working most of the time with it.
Okay. Have you read anything that made you think differently about fiction and how you approach writing it? This is from Stephanie.
All the time.
Yeah.
Oh, this all the time. I read novels all the time that change my way of how to do things, how writers do things better, how they get things tighter and cleaner and smoother. Um, I just read, I saw Joe Fender was on here about a week or two ago, and I just read his book, Suspicion. And the beginning of that book is a wonderful exercise in how you set up the motivation of a character. I learned a lot of these little details from reading other people's work.
Okay. What historical events got you inspired to write The Lincoln Myth? This is from Haley.
I learned of a deal that Brigham Young and Abraham Lincoln made in January of 1863, and I learned that when I was in Salt Lake City about 2 years ago. I went back and discovered the deal is real. It actually did happen, and its effect on the Civil War was somewhat profound. And so I learned, once I got that historical tidbit, then I started piecing everything together. I started dealing with the Founding Fathers, Lincoln, the myths associated with Lincoln, the question of secession. You put it all together and you start formulating a novel that begins to build upon itself. And that process takes 6 months to a year to actually for that process to percolate and for the idea to become the actual novel. So the Lincoln myth was actually born in 2000, late 2011, early 2012, and wasn't actually completed until 2013.
Cotton Malone has to be one of the best literary characters of all time. I'm curious what sort of feedback you've had about him. Edie Motley Wall.
And she also asked about the Mormon religion, the effect of the Mormon religion. I've had only a couple of LDS write some comments on Amazon. They seem to like the book. I was at G.J. Ford last night. I did my final book event on St. Simon's Island last night, and the G.J. Ford bookshop covered it. And Mary Jane, who runs that shop, is Mormon, and she loved the book. She said that I got it right on target, and everything was great. She enjoyed it very much. So I tried to be very faithful and tried to be very respectful to the church. This is not a Mormon bashing book in any shape, form, or fashion. In fact, it's a book that will alert you to Mormon's role in American history, which is very interesting. It's not a religion book. I don't deal with philosophy or religion in this book at all, but I do deal with history. And it's interesting how they found themselves in a very critical position in January of 1863 and helped affect the outcome of the Civil War.
Do you think Cotton will ever marry Cassiopeia Witt?
I'm not going to say never, but I doubt it because that could change things in the book. I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, but I think it's better to keep it like it is. It allows ups and downs and all kinds of things to go on. I'm not sure if they would ever marry. Like I said, I don't want to ever say never, but I don't have any plans for that to happening. This book is a first for Cotton because he has to experience an emotion he has never before in his life ever dealt with before. It's the emotion of jealousy, and he does not like it. He doesn't like it at all. He never thought himself capable of it. So this book sort of deals with Cotton's evolution into that. So I think I'll just keep exploring their relationship. It seems a lot more fun that way.
Why, I think we might have covered this. Why did Lincoln contact the Mormons? This is from Mads.
It was actually the other way around. Brigham Young sent a delegation to Washington, D.C., and he was looking for statehood for his territory out there, but Lincoln wasn't interested in that. And it was Lincoln that they sort of proposed the deal, and that ultimately came to pass. So it really wasn't Lincoln. It came the other way around. When the deal was proposed, Brigham Young liked it, they made it, and they both honored it. They both kept the deal. And to this day, Lincoln is still revered by the Mormon Church. They very much like him, contrary to many other presidents of the United States prior to Lincoln who were not very kind to them.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy asks about Thriller Fest. He says, Thriller Fest is just around the corner. What are you looking forward to most about attending the event in New York City?
We have a lot going on this year. It's really cool. We're doing something brand new this year on Tuesday. It's called Master Craft Fest. And there's 7 of us who are going to be teaching very small classes of 8 to 9 students. We thought we'd only get like 20 or 30 sign up. We got 62 signed up, and it's an all-day intensive class on the craft of writing. It's what I do in my 4-hour workshops with History Matters, but multiplied by 2 because it's going to be an 8-hour workshop. And that's the first time we've ever done this, and I'm looking forward to see how it plays out. And then we've got all kinds of things going on all week for Face Off. That's our new anthology that just came out last week. And we're going to have about 21 of the 24 contributors from Face Off at Thriller Fest. There's a lot happening, culminating in a big party on Friday night where everyone will be in one room. So anybody up in the New York area should come down to the Grand Hyatt and come and see us at Thriller Fest.
The King's Deception, this is Holly saying that The King's Deception was her favorite book until this one came out. Man, I would love to see this as a TV series, she says.
Oh, man, so would I. That'd be great. We actually have some interest in that. Alcon Entertainment bought the rights to Cotton Malone a year ago, and they have re-upped those rights, and there's some interest now from a studio, and they're actually looking at perhaps converting Cotton into a television series. I don't know if it'll ever happen or not, but I will say that it is moving along in the steps necessary to make that happen. So who knows? Maybe in a couple of years you may see it on small screen.
That'd be great. You were a founding member and past president of International Thriller Writers. Can you describe the experience of Thriller Fest when it happens in New York each summer? How does it differ from other literary gatherings or conferences? This is from Ben.
Thriller Fest is very different, and everyone who attends it says that. It's a different feel to it. Thriller Fest is the gathering of the genre. ITW, International Thriller Writers, is a group of 2,600 thriller writers from around the world. And we gather in New York every year. It's like summer camp for thriller writers and thriller enthusiasts. And we're getting more and more fans coming. You know, the beginning it was 100 or 200. Now it's 500, 600, 700 fans. And it's growing every year. But it's a very different conference. It's a very intimate conference. It's a very hands-on, one-on-one. We don't have any secret rooms. We don't have any places where people hang out. Everything is right out in the open, and everybody is there together. Everyone's treated equally. There's no special VIPs. There's only one VIP in all of Thriller Fest, and that's our Thriller Master, who we honor each year. And this year it's Scott Turow. Otherwise, everybody else is a thriller writer. And it's quite a remarkable 5 days there in the Grand Hyatt, because you will see writers everywhere, huddled up, talking, plotting, interacting with each other. It's really an amazing experience. And when we envisioned all of this many years ago, that was our purpose. We wanted this to happen. We wanted Thriller Fest to become a gathering of the genre, and that's exactly what it is. Now with some fans who come and hang out with us. So, as I said, anyone up in the Northeast area, there, just come by in July. It's the first week of July, and check us out.
Can you talk about speed pitching at Thriller Fest?
Speed. That's Agent Fest. Yeah, we have Agent Fest on Thursday, and it's quite remarkable. We have 70 of the biggest agents in the business because we do it right there in New York City. And we get 300 or 400 more people who sign up for Agent Fest. And it goes over several hours, and you have 3 minutes to pitch your book. Every 3 minutes, a bell goes off, and you move to the next person. And during that several hours, you can see a dozen or more agents and make a personal pitch. It's quite remarkable, because when I started out, I didn't have that. I had to do it the old-fashioned way through query letters. But now you can look someone in the eye. And we actually have some classes on how to pitch earlier in the day that helps everybody out. And it's just an amazing experience. Every year we get quite a few sign-ups, agents sign up folks, and we get several sales every year. Every year we're getting 1, 2, 3, 4 or more sales from manuscripts that are found at Agent Fest.
Brooke wants to know where she can take your writer's workshop. Where will you be next?
There's only 2 left this year. There's one in Prince Edward Island in August, our very first international event, and the other one will be in Rhode Island in Newport in October. And you can find out about both of those on my website, steveberry.org, at the events section. Those are the only two left this year. We just did two on the road, and we did 3 History Matters events while we were on the road and raised $30,000 for several historic projects. And we're hoping to raise some equal amount of money in Canada, Rhode Island, and Connecticut later this year. We do around 6 to 8 History Matters projects a year. Anybody out there that has one that might interest us, go to steveberry.org, go to the History Matters section, click on it, send us an email. We'll see if we can help you out.
People have compared Cotton Malone to that of a modern-day Indiana Jones. What do you think about that? Are you a fan of the Indiana Jones franchise? Michael asked this question.
Oh, of course. I mean, they're wonderful. That's action, history, secrets, conspiracy, international settings. That's exactly what I write. So I love that stuff. And Cotton is a little bit of Indiana Jones, a little bit of James Bond, a little bit of every kind of action hero. But also he thinks with his brain. He also uses his brain a lot. And Cotton's not perfect. Cotton also makes mistakes. He screws up. It makes him more normal, makes him more human. And I think that's why people relate to him, as Indiana Jones would do. He would mess up too, but he was always able to pull it back and make it happen in the end. And that's Cotton's attribute as well.
Do you have any plans to write a young adult book?
I really don't. I don't read the genre, so I'm not familiar with it. So I don't know. I'd have to learn the genre in order to know how to fashion a story for it. So that's not something that I've really moved towards. Would I like to write something other than what I'm writing? Sure. I'd love to do a science fiction book. That'd be fun. Maybe even a fantasy novel would be fun too. But right now, it's going to be writing, my international suspense thrillers, at least for the next few years.
Okay. What advice do you give for new ebook authors to get publicity for new books sold on Amazon? And also, what do you think of the Amazon hashtag issue?
Well, the advice to ebook authors are you need to hire someone who knows what they're doing, because the publicity and how to get the proper marketing for your book in an e-format is something that you've got to know what you're doing. I do this every day, and I've been doing it every day for the last 12 years, and I keep up with this stuff every second of every day. And it takes about everything I've got to stay with it. I can't imagine how someone would do it who doesn't keep up with it. So I would recommend you hire companies, people who can do this. There are companies out there that are very competent. I use one. I have one I use. I use AuthorBuzz is who I use. They do a great job, and those are the folks that know how to do it. And we just used them for my last book, The Lincoln Myth, and they did a tremendous job in the marketing and publicity of that novel. So I would recommend you get someone who knows what they're doing, because it's not for the faint of heart and it's not for the amateur. You've got to really be up on this. As to the Amazon hashtag issue, I kind of stay out of that. You got 2 multi-billion-dollar corporations fighting for each other on which one's going to make more money, and I just don't have much interest in that fight. That's just that fight's between them. It's kind of like it's like Godzilla versus King Kong, and just let them duke it out, and we'll see what's left standing when they get done.
Okay. You turn out essentially a book a year. Do you ever feel like your stories are becoming procedural, or is the passion still there? It's just done on a time crunch. This is from Christina.
No, I don't have that feeling at all. If I had that feeling, I'd quit doing it. I would lose interest in it. I have to do a book a year because the publishers have this really stupid rule, which I don't agree with. They won't give you a check unless you give them a book. And that's a horrible rule. I wish they would, they should give you the check and you could give them the book when you feel like it, but it doesn't work like that. So this is my job. I'm a full-time writer, so I have to generate a book a year. But that book, I just don't sit down and force myself to write a book a year. I've been thinking about that book for an entire year before that, and working on the research and putting that book together. It's just not something that just came in my brain and said, oh, I need to write a book real quick, let me put one together. I think this through very carefully, and I go through it very carefully because I'm going to be living with this for 18 months in my brain and I want to be able to enjoy it myself. So I pick subject matters that interest me and I hope interest the reader. And I never just go through the numbers. I mean, that would be really dull. I would, if I was doing that, I'd just quit.
Um, what was your favorite thing to do as a kid? This is coming from Sydney Hunter.
Well, I know you may think I make this up, but I'm not making it up. But my favorite thing to do was to read.
To read.
I enjoyed reading. Reading was fun. I was a Hardy Boy person. I read Hardy Boy books. I love those books, and I'd read them over and over again, and loved every second of them, and pretended I was one of them. So reading to me was a great joy, and I always savored it. Today, of course, we have a lot of distractions. In my day, when you cut on the television, there were 3 channels: NBC, ABC, and CBS, and that was it. You didn't have anything else to look at when I was young, and we didn't have computers and internets and all kinds of things. But that's really no excuse today. Reading is still available. There's more to read today than ever in human history. It's easier to read today than any time in human history, and I would encourage all kids to read. It's a wonderful, wonderful endeavor.
Will we be seeing Luke Daniels again? The character.
Absolutely. That's why I created him. I wanted him to stay around a little while. He was fun. He plays off of Cotton nicely. He's young enough that he makes the mistakes that Cotton would never make. So it's fun to have someone who can actually screw up like that. Their interaction was a lot of fun. So he will be back. He's back in next year's novel, and he'll be back for the novels after that. I very much enjoyed him. So I took a lot of time to create him in this book, so I didn't want to just get rid of him.
Okay, Michael says, I'm a history buff and your books are always so well researched. I know I'm going to get the good stuff when reading you. How much digging goes into each novel?
A lot. I spend 300 to 400 sources. I used at least 300 to 400 primary or secondary sources for each novel. The Lincoln Myth, I had about 300 books on Abraham Lincoln. I go through those books. I don't read every word of 300 books, obviously, but I read good, solid chunks of 300 books. Yes, I do. And I'm looking for those nuggets and those little pieces of information. I try to keep it as accurate as I can. I try to make it as realistic as possible. I try not to trip it up unless I have to, and when I do, I write in the writer's note in the back exactly when I do that. The writer's note is there. I spend a lot of time on that, so when the reader is done, they can read that writer's note and fill in the gaps of what's true and what's false. A lot of people getting their history from reading novels like mine, which is not necessarily the best thing in the world because I'm not a historian. I'm a novelist, but I try to get it as accurate as I can, realizing that fact.
What is the best feedback you've gotten from your readers? How did it make you feel? This is from Carly.
Well, I write novels with multiple points of view. I have between 3 and 5 points of view in a book, and I bounce back and forth between those 3 to 5 points of view who are in different locations doing different things and ultimately come together. Well, for many years, several years, it was 5 or 6 years, I got a lot of complaints, and I would read the reviews and I would read it where people said they were having a hard time keeping up because they don't read a book in one sitting, and they were having a hard time picking up the storyline when they put it down and coming back. And I heard that criticism enough that I considered that was valid and was correct. So I modified about 3 years ago how I plot a novel. I still have the 3 to 5 points of views, but now they're much closer together. They're much more interrelated. They're much more, they're not as diverse. They're actually physically closer together. There's a lot about them that's easier to keep up. And I modified that from Jefferson on, and I really have not heard that complaint much since Jefferson Key. It's been a lot better. You get it every once in a while. You get 1 or 2, but I used to get a lot of them. So writers have to listen to these things because you got to realize something. No writer ever got better by being told how great they are. So you got to listen to the criticism. Sometimes it's not valid. Sometimes it's a personal thing. But sometimes that makes a lot of sense, and that was one of those. And I'm glad I switched because I like keeping it a lot tighter and a lot more intimate of a story.
Okay, Jeremy says, congrats on the Lincoln Myth being on the bestseller list. How does it feel to know that all your hard work has paid off and people are receiving your story well?
That's always great to see. I mean, we all talk about that we don't look at the list and we don't pay attention to them, but we're lying. We do look at them and we do pay attention to them. It's an affirmation. It's like, I did it. I actually made that happen and it worked. And this book debuted at number 4 on the New York Times hardcover list and number 3 on the New York Times ebook list, which was very gratifying. And number 6 on USA Today, which is really tough to get into. We had a great run there, great debut with the novel, and it's a nice little affirmation that people liked it and that they read it and they're enjoying it, and it's on the list now 2 weeks. Hopefully to find out tonight if I made it to the 3rd week and see if I can just hang in there. Those lists are important, and there are 25 slots on the New York Times list. 25 slots. I have been on every single slot on the New York Times list, many of them more than once, except one slot. There's one slot I've never been, and that's the number 1 slot. And that's the one I'm looking for. So hopefully one day I can claim that number 1 spot. I've been as high as 2, but never to number 1.
Describe the range of events you do each year for History Matters. Would you like to do more events internationally? This is from Chauvin.
I would love to do more international. We always envision History Matters being global. And we've just started off in Canada, and sure, we'd love to do some more. So if anybody out there has an idea or a group that would be interested in having us, we'll be glad to look at that. The range of events we do are wide ranging. I mean, we don't really limit it to anything. We've done documents, buildings, land, cemeteries, libraries, rare books, you name it, we have done it. If it's historical value and it's in danger and there's a group willing to save it, we're willing to come help you do it. So we don't discriminate between what we help preserve. What we do discriminate against is the groups that we like to deal with. We want to make sure that the groups that we deal with are serious about historic preservation, that they get how to do it, and that they want to focus on an event that will actually raise hardcore money that can be used for that restoration project. See, because I don't charge to come to that event. I don't charge expenses or anything. I pay all of that out of my own pocket. So when I invest in going to an event, I want to make sure that it's going to be productive and we're going to leave there with money in the bank that's going to help save what we came to say.
Okay, Christina asked, what was the last movie you saw in theaters and was it any good?
Yeah, it was the Captain America movie. We went to see it. We have an IMAX theater, right? Yeah, we have an IMAX theater right down the street from where we live, and the children wanted to go see it, and everybody wanted to go see it, so I tagged along, and it was great. I enjoyed it. It was fun, and particularly in an IMAX theater. I mean, the thing just blows you out. You know, it's like you're actually in the movie. So I enjoyed that. I actually have a yearly pass to that IMAX theater, and I go over there quite a bit because they show documentaries during the day. They show wonderful documentaries, and they're up on the IMAX theater. It's amazing. They had one on Jerusalem that I went, and it's shown in 3D, and it's like you're in Jerusalem. You're like walking the streets. They had a great one on sharks and coral reefs. So sometimes when my head's all cluttered up, I'll ride over there and just sit down and watch one of those documentaries, because during the day, there's nobody in there. I'm like the only guy in the theater watching them. I enjoy that. It's a lot of fun.
You were just in Baltimore. Will Edgar Allan Poe ever be in a future book? This is Mads' question.
Yeah, we did a History Matters event for the Poe House up there. Their very first fundraising event, actually. We helped break them in. They've got a great organization up there, and they're serious about preserving that house. And we had a good time. We raised several $1,000s for them that evening. I don't know if Poe will make it in a book. You never know in this world. You know, some plot will come along where he will fit. I don't have one right at the moment, but I would be lying if I didn't say that I was intrigued by everything and paying very close attention to everything there. So you never know. Maybe one day.
What are some books you're currently reading? This is from Christina.
I'm reading a lot of books right now for the 2016 novel, and I really can't tell you what those are because it might give away what that plot's about, and I don't want anyone to steal it from me. So, but I'm reading a lot of books on that. I have several, maybe 200 right now that I'm going through on that because I'm actually writing the 2016 novel right now. The 2015 novel is finished and turned in. You always stay a year ahead in the book business, so it's done. So I'm reading a lot on that. I did just finish the novel that I read, Joe Fender's book, Suspicion. Enjoyed it very much. And I'm reading a couple of other biographies from the 19th century in America for the possible use in the 2018 novel that I'm 17 and 18 novel that I'm looking at. I always stay 3 books ahead in my brain. I'm always looking 3 books down the line. This is like going back to the earlier question. I just don't decide all at once on a whim what I'm going to write about. I think about it for a real long time before it's put together. And so that's what I really do is I read the books to get my mind thinking about those.
We have time for one more question. What's the one piece of advice that would benefit all aspiring writers?
It's a simple thing. It's not even complicated. You've heard it a million times. You have to write. You have to write every day. You have to sit down with your discipline and you have to write words. You have to study your genre. You have to rewrite those words and then you have to write some more and rewrite some more. There is only one way to learn how to write, and that is to actually sit down and do it every day. There's no shortcut. There's no easy way. There's no way around that. You have to write every day. To this day, I sit down and I write my 1,000 words every day. I try to do it 5 days a week. As much as I can, except when I'm on the road. Even when I'm on the road, though, I'm plotting or editing. So writing is a discipline. It's not an obsession. You don't get obsessed with it, but it is a discipline. Find the discipline that works for you and stick to it.
Thanks so much for joining us, Steve. And please head over to BookTrib.com to enter to win the Lincoln Myth. Thank you.
It's great to be here. Thank you.